Did y'all really think we weren't going to talk about Jimmy Kimmel? I mean, have you watched the show over the last 29 seasons?
It all started with a shockwave that hit late-night television. One of the biggest names in comedy was suddenly silenced. Jimmy Kimmel Live, a show that has been running for decades, was abruptly suspended after Jimmy made comments about the man accused of shooting political figure Charlie Kirk. Disney, the parent company of ABC, stepped in fast. They announced that production was being halted indefinitely, sending fans and critics alike into a frenzy. For many, this wasn't just about a late-night host crossing the line. It was about freedom of speech colliding head-on with corporate caution. Disney's official statement tried to calm the storm. They said the suspension was made to avoid inflaming an already tense and emotional situation across the country. The comments, they explained, were considered ill-timed and insensitive, so they decided to put the brakes on the show. But then, in a surprising twist, everything changed. After a series of private conversations with Jimmy, the network reversed its decision. The announcement came on September 22nd. Jimmy Kimmel Live was coming back to air, and soon. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now let's continue. The move raised eyebrows everywhere. Why would Disney first silence one of its biggest stars, only to bring him back so quickly?
The news comes the same day the co-hosts of The View, which include Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Hines, Sunny Houston, Anna Navarro, and Alyssa Farah-Griffin, broke their silence on the show being preempted following comments the comedian made.
It was clear that there was more happening behind the scenes than anyone was admitting. The drama was only just beginning. When the suspension news first broke, another storm was brewing, this time on daytime television. The women of The View, who never shy away from hot topics, stayed unusually quiet. Fans noticed right away. Why weren't Whoopi Goldberg, Sunny Houston, Anna Navarro, Sarah Hines, or Alyssa Farah-Griffin saying anything about Jimmy Kimmel being pulled off the air? After all, The View has always been the place where controversies get dissected, live, unfiltered, and sometimes explosively. That silence didn't last long. When the show went live again, Whoopi wasted no time. She looked directly at the audience and fired off her opening. Did you really think we weren't going to talk about Jimmy Kimmel? Have you been watching us the last 29 seasons? The crowd erupted.
Did y'all really think we weren't going to talk about Jimmy Kimmel? I mean, have you watched the show over the last 29 seasons?
Whoopi wanted it clear nobody, not Disney, not the FCC, not anyone, was going to muzzle The View. She explained why they waited before jumping in. They wanted to see if Jimmy himself would speak out first. And besides, their Friday episode had been taped before the news broke. But now that they were back live, the gloves were off. Whoopi even reassured fans overseas who were messaging her, worried that the silence meant trouble. "We're still here, still broadcasting," she declared. Her tone wasn't casual, it was defiant. It set the stage for what was about to come next. A direct confrontation with government officials and media powerhouses who had turned Jimmy's suspension into something much bigger than just a late-night TV controversy. The fire really caught when The View turned its focus on the government's role in this mess. Whoopi made it crystal clear. The government cannot pressure networks into silencing people. That's when the show rolled a montage of some unlikely allies, all agreeing on one thing. On screen were Republican Senators Rand Paul and Ted Cruz, alongside Democratic Senator Chris Murphy. Different parties, different politics, but united in calling out FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr. Carr had threatened action against ABC and Disney after Kimmel's comments, but these senators said his move was flat out wrong.
So no one silences us. And to all my friends in Italy who reached out, you have to know it's okay, we're still here, we're still broadcasting.
Rand Paul blasted the FCC for overstepping, saying he'd fight any attempt by the government to interfere with speech. Ted Cruz, never one to soften his words, compared it to mafia-style intimidation. He mocked Carr's stance, saying it sounded like a scene straight out of Goodfellas. "Nice bar you got here, shame if something happened to it." The crowd on The View laughed, but the message was serious. Chris Murphy, speaking from the Democratic side, didn't hold back either. He said Carr's behavior was not only inappropriate, it was unconstitutional. For once, politicians who normally clash over everything were on the same page.
And when the news broke last week about Jimmy Kimmel's suspension, we took a breath to see if Jimmy was going to say anything about it first. We did the same thing with Stephen Colbert.
The FCC had crossed a dangerous line, and The View wanted everyone watching to understand just how big of a deal that was. This wasn't about defending a late-night joke anymore. It was about defending the right to speak without government threats hanging over every word. After the senator's words lit up the screen, Sunny Hostin stepped in with her own take. As an attorney, she went straight to the heart of the matter: the First Amendment. She reminded everyone that free speech isn't just a talking point, it's the foundation of American democracy. The government doesn't get to pick and choose who can speak and who should be silenced.
Look, I have to tell you this. I lived through a right-wing dictatorship in Nicaragua, Somoza. I lived through a left-wing dictatorship.
But then Ana Navarro took things even further, pulling from her own life. She spoke with intensity, sharing what it was like to grow up in Nicaragua under two very different dictatorships. First, a right-wing regime under Somoza, then a left-wing one under Ortega.
In Nicaragua, under Ortega. This is what dictators and authoritarians do. It does not matter the ideology. At first,
she said censorship wasn't tied to one ideology, it was a tool both sides used to crush opposition. Ana painted a chilling picture. At first, she explained, regimes silence big voices, journalists, TV personalities, comedians. Then, slowly, they come for everyone else, scaring entire populations into silence. She warned the audience that once you start allowing the government to dictate speech, it doesn't stop. She even listed moments where the current government had tried to pressure the press, like pushing reporters out of the Oval Office or cutting funding to public broadcasters.
Then our show was on tape on Friday. But we are live here today, and we're getting into it now.
Her words hit hard. The crowd went quiet as she described how easily freedom can be chipped away. It was no longer about just one host losing airtime. Ana's message was clear. Censorship is the first step towards something much darker. Alyssa Farah Griffin picked up right where Ana left off, and her warning cut deep. She explained that what made her a conservative in the first place was the belief that the Constitution, flawed as it may be, got one thing absolutely right: the First Amendment. Free speech isn't just some abstract idea, it's the first line of defense against abuse of power. She pointed out something a lot of people forget: political power never stays in one place forever. Donald Trump wasn't going to be in charge for 100 years, and when the pendulum swings, the very same conservatives cheering on censorship today could be the ones silenced tomorrow. That thought hung in the air. Sarah Haynes backed her up, stressing that the issue wasn't about whether someone liked or disliked Jimmy's comments. It was about the precedent being set. If one administration can police what comedians, journalists, or networks are allowed to say, then the next administration can do the same, and maybe even worse. They even replayed Ted Cruz's words from an interview, where he admitted that no matter how much he clashed with Democrats, he didn't want a future where a left-wing president had the power to control speech on TV. For once, the message was bipartisan and blunt. Letting this kind of crackdown happen now would come back to haunt everyone later. The View made it clear. This wasn't just Jimmy Kimmel's fight anymore. It was a test of whether free speech could survive when government pressure and corporate interests collide. The tension wasn't only swirling on the set of late-night shows or daytime talk panels, it was also pulsing through the boardrooms of the biggest media empires in the country. Behind the polished press releases and cautious public statements, a bigger game was unfolding. Disney may have decided to bring Jimmy Kimmel back, but that didn't mean the battle was over. Other powerful players were watching closely, and some weren't willing to just let things slide. The timing made everything look even more suspicious. Nexstar Media Group, a massive company with hundreds of stations across the country, was waiting on government approval for its multi-billion-dollar takeover of Tegna. That kind of deal needs the FCC's blessing, and here they were, suddenly announcing that they would no longer air Jimmy Kimmel Live for the foreseeable future. The wording wasn't casual, it was carefully chosen, hinting that this wasn't about one comedian's words, but about proving loyalty to the regulators who held the keys to their deal. Then came Sinclair Broadcast Group, another giant with a reputation for flexing its influence over TV programming. They didn't just say they were pulling the show, they laid down demands like they were negotiating a settlement. They wanted Kimmel to apologize directly to Charlie Kirk's family, make a public pledge to behave differently, and even open his wallet to donate money to both the family and Turning Point USA. These weren't quiet suggestions, they were conditions for redemption, issued publicly, designed to humiliate him into compliance. The View's hosts had warned that censorship starts with big names and then trickles down. This was the perfect example. First a suspension, then government threats, and now corporations inserting themselves as moral referees. For many viewers, it felt like an organized effort to squeeze a comedian into silence, all under the banner of accountability. But Jimmy stayed silent. His team didn't respond to questions, and he made no public statement. That silence only fueled speculation. Was he refusing to bow to pressure? Or was he locked in negotiations behind the scenes with Disney and these powerful media groups? The unanswered questions kept the controversy alive, and with every day that passed, the stakes grew higher. This wasn't just about late-night comedy anymore, it was a tug of war over who really gets to control what Americans hear and see on their screens. Just when it seemed like the outrage might cool down, another twist hit. The controversy didn't stop with Disney reversing course. It spread to the powerful media companies that control what millions of Americans watch every night. Nexstar Media Group, a giant that owns dozens of local stations and was in the middle of a $6.2 billion deal to acquire Tegna, stepped in and made its move. They announced that Jimmy Kimmel Live would be pulled from their ABC affiliates for the foreseeable future. It wasn't just a pause, it was a message. Then, Sinclair Broadcast Group, another heavyweight in American television, joined the pile-on. They too declared they were indefinitely suspending the show on their stations, but they didn't stop there. Sinclair added strict conditions. Jimmy Kimmel should apologize directly to Charlie Kirk's family, issue a public statement of accountability, and even make a donation to the family and to Turning Point USA. The demands shocked people. It wasn't just about what Jimmy had said anymore. It was about corporate players trying to leverage tragedy and outrage into their own bargaining chip with Disney. For many, it felt like the line between corporate image management and outright censorship had been completely blurred. Reporters reached out to Jimmy's representatives for comment, but there was silence. No statement, no apology, nothing. The air around the situation only grew heavier, as everyone wondered, would Jimmy speak out, or would he let the storm rage on without a word from him? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.